Welcome, everyone, to the 29th Miami Jewish Film Festival, the largest Jewish film festival in the world. We want to thank all our members, sponsors, and community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout all these years. My name is Rabbi Klein. I serve as the Director of Spiritual Care at the Greater Miami Jewish Federation and the Executive Vice President of the Rabbinical Association of Greater Miami. I'm very excited this morning to be moderating a virtual conversation with Rabbi Gluck and the directors of our film, Elin Moe and Winstan Whitter, from the movie How to Get On with Everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I want to first ask our directors, Elin and Winstan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, and what motivated you personally to explore this film?
Thank you for having us. So I lived in Stamford Hill, where Rabbi Herschel Gluck lives as well. So I lived in the neighborhood for a long time and always thought that this community needed to be explored in a documentary, and especially Herschel Gluck, because he's a very captivating person and does great work. So we wanted to put that on film, really. And Winstan and I have worked together on several other films, and it turned out that Winstan, separate from me, also knew Rabbi Gluck. So over several years, we're mulling around this idea to make a film about him, and then we started making it, and it's taken us almost 5 years in total to complete it. And it's been quite a journey, very interesting for lots of reasons. And we're very pleased that we're here today.
And greetings everybody. I'm Winston. So I grew up in Stamford Hill. I was there from I think 1975 till 1997, and grew up amongst the Orthodox Jewish community. And all my neighbors, were Hasidics, and used to play together as kids. And so I'm very familiar with the culture, with the people. Um, and I had a great opportunity later on in life to work with Herschel Rabbi Gluck. We ended up becoming community partners at the Hackney Museum, and we were doing a project about Kazanoff Road, where there are synagogues, where there are mosques, schools, etc. So we all were involved in working there for this exhibition. So we became very good friends from there, and I was always struck by Herschel, his character, his openness, and also very struck by the Muslim Jewish forum that he's a part of, that he created. And I was very struck by that, and I thought to myself, oh, maybe we should make a film about you one day. I was hinting the idea at that time, but didn't didn't get as serious as we did when I started to collaborate with Elin. So it was, yeah, as we said, it had been a few years and we've been working together, and then we eventually realized we were talking about the same Herschel. And then that was when we decided, we plucked up the courage, decided, okay, let's see if we'd be interested. So we went from there, and I think that was somewhere around 2017. No, 2018, I think.
Before
2000,
COVID,
yeah,
and then yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much how it all began.
So just another question for our directors, because I'm sure Rabbi Gluck is going to give us his insight, but why do you think that this story right now needed to get out to the world? As people that produce documentaries, you have many stories to tell. I'm sure many stories that you still want to tell. Why this story per se is significant for us, both in the Jewish community, but also beyond the Jewish community?
I think the world is so polarized at the moment, and to see someone with his compassion and humanity, and the example of him being out there, reaching out, meeting people, and navigating all these different worlds and people that he interacts with on a daily basis. I just think it's really important for people to see that, and so that we don't all sit in our boxes where you and our bubbles and our own echo chambers, but we cross over and literally bridge communities on an individual level, but also on communal level. So and it's important for lots of communities in the world today that this work is happening.
I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't timed, everything kind of organically kind of rolled from one thing to the next. So when we began this project, 7th of October hadn't occurred, we had an idea to make a film about Herschel's work and about his life's journey and what it is that motivated him to become the person he is and the work he does. And so that was always the base, of our story, and then we follow that thread, and then things started to happen. So, like COVID happened, and then we were on a hiatus for a while. We stopped, nothing happened for a while. So, we sort of realized since, October 7th that, since we've addressed it in the film, that it was important to, we need to get this film done now. And I feel like the world needs some positivity, somebody that can look at things from a different perspective, and someone that's directly doing their best to help the situation from where he is as well. And yeah, just positivity, just to show that, just to give people inspiration, because that's the feeling that we get from the audiences when we screen it, and those are the responses where people say, "Oh, I feel a lot better, after watching it. They've been following the news and all the tragedies that's going on, and then they watched our film and then they said, oh, that made me feel so much better about humanity. That like there are people like Herschel in the world that are making a difference, and it's inspires hopefully them to also make a difference in whichever way they can."
I want to turn to Rabbi Gluck, and the movie is called How to Get On with Everyone. And when I was watching this film, I was reminded of the famous words of Chazal, of the rabbis, that say, "Havi makabel kol adam b'sever panim yafot," that one should receive another person with a pleasant disposition. And throughout the film, it's not that you just say good morning and hello. You show interest in another person. They see your panim, they see your face, and you recognize theirs. And this kindness really disarms people from any type of stereotypes that we have about another, that it's human to human, soul to soul, which I think is so important for the healing of us world, to get behind the assumptions that we make about one another. What do you think, Rabbi, were the experiences in your life that contributed to your disposition and your philosophy on life?
I saw role models who not only spoke in these terms, but lived in these terms, who devoted their lives to seeing the good in others and helping others. And they gave me an insight into that. To quote Pirkei Avos again, that every human being is created in the image of God. Not just every Jew, but every human being, like the Tosfos Yontov says on the Mishnah. And every human being has a divine image and therefore has something special about them. Because that is what we mean when we say every human being is created in the divine image. Because we're not talking about the face. We're talking about something much, much deeper. And therefore, every human being deserves respect. And it's also what Chazal tell us, that Rabbi Yochanan said, "Lo yehik demani adam sholem ba'olam afli nochrish habeshuk," that every human being, whoever they might be, even someone who's in the marketplace, what the Chazal seem to intimate, that someone in the marketplace there's something not quite perfect about them. But one has to not just be reactive in peace, one has to be proactive in peace. I went out to greet the other person with the name of Hashem. Shalom is Shemo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And greet that person and appreciate that person. Like the famous Gemara in Tainis, Lech le'uman she'asani, that every human being is created by the master craftsman, God himself. And therefore every human being has something beautiful. However, even though the person might look somewhat challenged, but there's always something beautiful in every human being. And when one sees that beauty, one engages with the person, and the person engages with you as well, because you find that common humanity, that we're all created by God himself. So we all are Brei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We all are creations of God himself, and therefore each one of us has something of God within them, and therefore is something special and can achieve something special.
Rabbi Gluck very well knows the character of Aaron HaKohen, the high priest Aaron, who the Gemara says is Ohev Shalom v'rodef Shalom. He loves peace, but he also pursues peace. And the word pursue, rodef, is generally in Hebrew a military term. You pursue somebody because you need to destroy them. You need to attack them. That's a military term. And yet, the same kind of, we have to have that militancy towards peace, that militancy towards understanding the image of God in each of us. And that's Aaron HaKohen. And I think you're kind of expressing that same idea.
And of course, Mishnah continues, the same Mishnah continues, that even if they don't have any quality about them, apart from the fact that they are brios, they're created by God, they're deserving of love.
That's true. I was very struck by by you demonstrating, with the refugee, your refugee experience does inform your compassion. Let me ask you, as a child of refugees who came to the country from Austria, how has that refugee experience impacted the way you see the world? And as you know, right, some people that are refugees, when they come to another place, they're very fearful. The trauma that they've experienced as refugees doesn't open them up to others, but rather the trauma actually closes them down, makes them more fearful of the other. And I'm sure you've seen both of those sides. So I just want to ask you a little bit about your life growing up and how that kind of being a second generation, the child of refugees, impacted how you viewed the world, especially at this juncture in history where I think there's a lot of animus towards other groups and outsiders, I know in the United States where I'm interviewing you, but I'm sure also in England and Europe right now.
Yes. It's interesting that both my parents, who didn't know one another at the time, my mother at the end of the war was about 16. And a lot of Jewish refugees came to England in 1945. They had been slave laborers, they had been in the concentration camps, they had lost all their families. And my mother and her siblings had lost their parents, had lost all their parents, uncles, aunts, over 100 members of their family. But when these refugees came in 1945 to England, it was these refugees, my mother and her siblings, who opened their home, which was very Spartan, and actually took care of these individuals. And my mother had a brother whom I'm named after, and these refugees told me many years later that he was so welcoming that he literally took off his shirt to give to these refugees who didn't have a shirt. And my father, on the other hand, my father was in the British Army, and he was one of the Jewish soldiers who liberated Bergen-Belsen, which appears in the film. But he didn't just liberate Bergen-Belsen. He stayed in Bergen-Belsen, despite the typhoid, despite more Jews died in Bergen-Belsen after the war than during the war because disease, it was very unsanitary conditions. But he stayed there in order to help these people start their lives again, find a way forward, build their lives again. But this wasn't one swallow which makes a summer. Both my parents throughout their lives continued to care for people from all backgrounds. When they saw someone in trouble, they were there for them. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't ask who this person was, where this person was from. If a person was in trouble, they were there for them. And seeing this and experiencing this and living this, of course, had a very profound impact on me.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for the directors. In the production, you said that this was being planned even before COVID. And of course, 2 years ago, the Jewish community suffered the devastation of October 7th. How did you as a team respond to those events, or how did that change your thinking in terms of your the design or the arc of the story that you wanted to tell? Because clearly after October 7th, there's been a spiked rise in hatred against the Jewish community. Of course, Rabbi Gluck is involved in Shomrim, the volunteer security force, and they talked about the doubling of the number of anti-Semitic or hate incidents in the past 2 years. So maybe you could talk a little bit, about that and how that impacted your production of this documentary.
I mean, we were extremely shocked, of course, when it happened, and I think the production as such stopped for some time, but then we realized that we also should capture what was happening in Rabbi Gluck's life at this time. So we filmed the media coming to your house, and then later on we realized that because of the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in London, we should cover that side more than we maybe had. But I suppose overall, and then 2 years later, it's the whole making of the film coming together. It's been a very, very sensitive and delicate sort of balancing act of the different elements to the film. I mean, we knew we had to deal with the 7th of October, and but of course this wasn't something we expected, so it changed, and we've done a lot of thinking and a lot of sort of restructuring around that, but of course it became a very important part of the film, and then seeing how Herschel's Rabbi Gluck's reaching out to other communities as well, and obviously not everything is captured on film, but this whole very difficult situation for the Jewish community, and his approach to that through this situation. And then not all of that is captured on film, but a very sort of compassionate, dealing with individuals, dealing with the immediate community, but also other communities throughout. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's in stages as well, that we would be sort of recording with Herschel a little bit more, as to like this, because the situation obviously keeps on changing, with the current war. So we were doing our best to stay relevant, so it doesn't, what we've recorded 4 or 5 months ago, whatever, and we're finishing off the film, we would always update it. But then because of certain scenarios that came about, like when the Indonesians came to visit and then they were asking questions about that situation arose. So then again, it was a natural sort of update, so to speak, from them asking questions on his perspective about the situation. And with the Shomrim, and when we were out on patrol, again, those things would arise there. So it's organically we kind of kept coming back to it, and we can't make the film the focus of it, but we definitely managed to, I feel, to cover it in the best way we could, alongside all of the other work that Herschel's doing as well. It's a difficult situation because you could just end up overshadowing the film, and you focus heavily on that, and then everything else falls away. So we really worked hard, and we were a balancing act of that, but respectfully, to make sure that he could really give as much input into that as possible.
Well, I'd like to ask Rabbi Gluck. Rabbi Gluck, you said that you're a person that pursues peace and uncovering the image of God in each person, and clearly, and you display a certain type of leadership of bringing people together from different walks of life. So my question to you is, like, after October 7th, first of all, how did you as a leader see yourself and your role? Because my guess would be that there were relationships that were being frayed or very tense at that time, especially perhaps with parts of the Muslim community. Did you experience groups or individuals that you felt were your allies and all of a sudden are no longer your allies in a way? How did you deal with disappointments or those kind of challenges? How did you navigate in this time of deep tension and discord?
My relationship with many sections of the Muslim community and other communities goes back a long time, and it's never been superficial. It's never been a tick box exercise. It's always been a profound relationship. And therefore, even an earthquake as the 7th of October and what followed didn't really change the relationship. Because the relationship, we started off the relationship that we don't speak about religion and we don't speak about politics. So even though these two elements, of course, are very important in all our lives, we cannot ignore them. But that wasn't the core glue that brought us together. The core glue that brought us together were personal relationships, and that we're all citizens of one country, either Britain or Europe or United States or wherever, and we have an investment in the countries where we are, and we share a lot of the same challenges, and we share a lot of the same issues that are of concern to us, that we tend to have large families, we tend to have families which are multi-generational, we tend to have a good sense of humor, we tend to care about the weak and the dispossessed within our communities. uh, there's a lot that unites us, or even issues concerning bris milah and shchita, where they have similar challenges to us, and working together has is something. Even though we have differences regarding religious matters, but there is a commonality that is being challenged, and by working together we can protect what is important and of great value to us. So therefore, being allies in these matters shows that it's good to be friends. It's worthwhile to be friends. It's worthwhile to stick with one another, even though we have differences, even though we have strong differences of opinion regarding other matters. But the advantage of being allies in these matters outweighs the negativity which comes from other directions. So therefore, we're not in denial. We're not saying no, these issues don't matter. But there's so much that unites us that when it comes to the divisive matters, even though they are true tensions, they do not destroy the positive interaction that exists between us.
And really, at root, it's also the human relationships, because
Yep.
there are some political alliances, for example, on kashrut and other issues where it's clear that you find common cause in terms of promoting religious liberty, that each
Yep.
community should have the right to live and practice their religion as they see appropriate. So that's clearly an instrumental relationship. But from the stories that I've seen in the documentary, the relationships that you have go much deeper than that, that you enrich their lives and they enrich your lives. So as we go to the end of our little discussion together, I wanted to ask you, first of all, how has your interactions with different faith communities and different ethnic communities, both in England but also around the world, impacted your own understanding of what it means to be a Jew? Because you live your life in some ways an insular community as a Haredi or an ultra Orthodox Jew. I don't like give labels, but you're living in a community that may be more insular. So how has that experience with the other impacted your understanding? And I also would, like to hear just a little bit of how that your community receives you and how you understand the world.
I think on all the above, very constructively and very positively. And when I walk through the street, people of all different sections of the Jewish community come up to me with love and positivity from all sides of the aisle, as they say in America. And I think, Avram, Echad Hoya Avram. Avram was insular. But at the same time, he invited into his tent all different types of people, even Arabs who bow down to the dust on their feet, pre-Muslim Arabs, people who didn't have the belief in one God. But he still, not only he brought them into his tent, he brought them in with love. He gave them, even though he was in pain, Shlishi Lamila, the third day after the circumcision, he said, come in, I'm going to look after you. And therefore, being insular and being outward going isn't contradictory in Judaism. It's part of the same whole.
I'll conclude just with a little insight, which I think kind of embodies Rabbi Gluck. We learn in Jewish tradition, for our viewers, that Abraham was looking for the outsider. He was trying to bring in the guests, but it was the third day according to tradition after he was circumcised, after his bris milah. So he was very sick at that point. So he was suffering. Very often when people suffer, they sometimes turn inward. So we see Avraham at the foot of his tent or the front of his tent looking outward at the very point where he feels a sense of suffering himself, but the suffering is not turned outward. It's to see the suffering of other people and to alleviate the suffering of other people. So he's actually running to bring people in. And I really was inspired by this movie because I think it provides a message of hope to all of us, that all of us can, like Rabbi Gluck or like Avram Avinu, all of us can emulate that in different ways in our lives, to always understand, to look outward, to look beyond the divisions, and to live our lives with a sense of compassion, bringing people close, because especially during this time, we need that more than ever. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this very engaging conversation and to learn a little bit more about all of you personally. I want to congratulate you on this beautiful film, and may you all go from strength to strength and continue to do the good in this world. I once again want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers out there, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout the years. Again, thank you all for participating in the 29th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival.
Thank
Shalom
you very
to everybody.
much.
Shalom.
All the best.
Shalom. Thank you very much.